I don't need to remind anyone here that we are living during frightening and difficult times. In some ways, we truly are in a new situation. Devastating worldwide climate change is not a problem previous generations anticipated. Surviving will require fundamental social change on all levels, and we do risk running out of time. However, when it comes to most other problems, many in our country, indeed most people globally, have been experiencing them all along. Genocide and white supremacist violence are not new. Concentration camps and xenophobic rulers, imperial wars fought with guns or with trade policies are not new. Restrictions on democracy and civil liberties, attacks based on gender and sexuality are not new. Greed and poverty are certainly not new. All have been part of this country's history from the very beginning. At times, they become more severe and visible, like now. But we are recognizing the magnitude of these problems more intensely, some for the first time, largely because we have access to social media or to movements and organizations, such as Unitarian Universalism, that expose us to news we would not get otherwise. Even if we do have direct experience, it might not provide useful knowledge. If we lack an accurate analysis of the broader context, we may blame ourselves unnecessarily, or blame God or bad luck, or worse, blame ordinary people who seem different from ourselves. Now, you may be wondering already when I am going to get to the hopeful part. Be patient, it's coming. I just want to frame hope in its actual context, because a hope that denies or fails to understand this context is mere wishful thinking. Personally, I'm not terribly fond of the word hope. Sometimes we hope for things, and they do happen. But nothing happens just because we hope. Hope is effective only if it inspires action. I prefer the word faith. By definition, faith does not require evidence. And that's why it can be powerfully liberating. Evidence may discourage action. For example, if we focus on the overwhelming scientific evidence predicting apocalyptic results from climate change, it would be very easy to lose hope and give up trying to do anything about it. Yet, even in the face of our personal mortality, for which the evidence is far more absolute, most of us still create meaning in life and find pleasure. We engage in intimate relationships. We find activities we enjoy or that call us into action and service. We prioritize these with the faith that they are worth doing in the brief time allotted. And that keeps us alive with hope despite it all. Today, on this Labor Day weekend, we focus on the dignity and value of work and workers, and on the contributions of labor unions to our societal well-being. Work is one of those life activities that most of us have to prioritize. Often, our choice of work depends largely on the circumstances of our birth. Some of us were lucky enough to grow up shielded from the stresses of poverty and discrimination. Many of us had the resources to attend college and find a career in a field we enjoy. We may find meaning and value in our chosen professions, even if we dislike our specific jobs. However, much work is simply hard, or boring, or dangerous, even with a union, a living wage, and good benefits. Satisfaction might not be in the work itself, but in creating a better life for our children, in the pride we take in doing a job well, or in serving the greater good. Aren't you glad that garbage gets picked up, buses carry us where we need to go, fruits and vegetables get picked, and restrooms get cleaned? Each of us depends on the work of others to survive and flourish, and that work deserves to be honored. We need people like Sam's father. Piping systems are virtually everywhere, and someone needs to install, maintain, and repair them. In today's computer age, we also need software engineers like Sam. At their best, labor unions fight for the dignity of workers, dignity measurable in practical terms of pay, benefits, hours, and safe working conditions, and dignity not as measurable, such as pride, security, and community. I gained all of these as an active union member. Moreover, the labor movement as a whole gave me faith in the innate worth and value of ordinary, flawed people with average abilities, myself included. My faith in the creativity of the vast majority of people who are not rich, not that well educated, not celebrities, not persons with unusual talents, not even persons of great virtue necessarily. That faith is unshakable despite it all. The evidence may say that greed or bigotry has broken us beyond repair. It may say the enemy is too powerful, or that we lack the time or the collective will to save ourselves. My faith says we can, and thus the possibility that we might is what keeps me alive with hope despite it all. In response to a newspaper that published his obituary, the author Mark Twain once quipped, "Reports of my death are greatly exaggerated." Organized labor has been in a steep decline in this country for the last 40 years, and pundits, whether mourning or cheering, have been announcing greatly exaggerated reports of its death for most of my adult life. And though my faith guides me, I do admit a little positive evidence that labor is alive and kicking despite it all is more than welcome. And thankfully, that evidence is growing. Labor activism is reviving in the U.S., all over the country, despite those who claimed it could not. Whenever my faith in the official labor movement has lagged, and it has at times, I am reminded of the historical inevitability of resistance, despite flawed or stagnating institutions. Often at those times when victory seems least possible. Let me cite a few examples of this emerging vitality. In the past, many labor leaders believed Those who rely on gig employment or low-wage jobs like fast food service could not be organized. Gig workers are too atomized. The potential for high turnover in low-wage jobs prevents commitment and continuity. Yet, now we have Uber and Lyft drivers demonstrating and striking and actually winning concessions, even though the law deems them independent contractors without the legal rights of employees. The fight for 15 minimum wage, aided by unions but not started by them, has proven the willingness of low-wage workers to fight for their needs and win, one city and state after another. Well-established unions are showing new signs of life, thanks to militancy from below. Witness the wave of successful strikes by teachers, some of them in defiance of union leaders. Many unions have already begun successful organizing of workers ignored in the past, such as the car wash workers in Los Angeles being organized recently. Union activists of my generation used to write off youthful tech workers as would-be capitalists with no collective social conscience. I will add to what Sam said about growing activism in tech. Ties into what he said about the working with other people that are being unionized. I was very inspired a few weeks ago by seeing dozens of young tech workers walking in a picket line to support cafeteria workers in their office building, who are being organized by the Hotel and Restaurant Union. Yes. Lastly, I'd like to point out a growing strategy within labor: bargaining for the common good. The idea that unions should benefit not only their members, but also the people who use the products and services they create. Locally, this is best represented by the mental health clinicians at Kaiser, willing to go on strike, which is no easy deal, to get a contract protecting the rights of their patients to services denied in practice, though promised in Kaiser insurance policies. And much of labor's new vitality is thanks to young workers, often young workers of color, inspired by other growing movements, in which, it should be noted, unions are increasingly engaged. But I see my original calling, inspiring a new generation. How could I not be alive with hope despite it all? Beyond workplace organizing, I am inspired by the new Poor People's Campaign. Under the leadership of the Reverend William Barber, it emerged from the Moral Monday movement, which has mobilized thousands of union workers, among others, yes, to engage in civil disobedience for economic justice. The campaign is reviving the spiritual commitment and tactics of the civil rights movement. When I see what inspired me as a young person, now inspiring a new generation, revitalizing older activists too, and bringing us together across differences supposed to be insurmountable, how can I not be alive with hope despite it all? So what can we, as Unitarian Universalists, absorb from these newly emerging developments? Here's what I think. First, to the extent we commit ourselves to social justice within and beyond our walls, our efforts can contribute to measurable positive results for actual people. At its best, our movement, like others, can provide a sense of community and security. And our spiritual focus, if we stay hopeful, may revive the weary and discouraged. Second, people fighting for justice in their own communities and workplaces appreciate solidarity and practical assistance. They could use whatever resources we or others can provide, but they don't need our leadership. In fact, it's far more likely that we could learn from theirs. Third, if something needs to be done, we make no progress until we defy the evidence that it can't be done. When action succeeds, despite it all, evidence of success inspires more effort, and evidence of failure becomes a challenge to overcome, not a permanent condition. As Marge Piercy writes, we must not be parlor generals or field deserters. The best gift we can offer now and for future generations, and it is more than good enough, is to haul in our places, moving in a common rhythm, faithful to the end, alive with hope, despite it all.